Welcome, everybody, to the second week of Entrepreneurship in Pharmacy. This week's lecture is a combined lecture that we are going to talk about mistakes to avoid in any type of business, but especially a pharmacy business, and kind of give an overview of what operations management of a pharmacy business. Some of the concepts I talk about may reflect to what a traditional community pharmacy business is, but a lot of these principles will also connect to what any type of business would be. And so what I'm going to do in this brief video is a couple things. Highlight some of those mistakes and give you an overview of what you will need to become an expert at and able to run your own business. Throughout this course, we will dive into more detail. If you notice in the syllabus later on, we'll talk more about what is needed for operations management. But later on in the semester, we'll talk about financial management and strategic planning. So let us begin. The first thing why hopefully you're taking this course is you want to understand, do you know your pharmacy inside and out before starting a pharmacy business? So to ask yourself, how much do you know about business? And in particular, how much do you know about the pharmacy business, what goes in day and out, and how much do you know about the businesses of your partners that you may be working with, either physicians, hospitals, health systems, the way Medicare runs, the way Medicaid runs. Medical businesses differ a lot from other businesses because in medical businesses, especially pharmacy, there's numerous regulations. There's multiple different agencies and legal entities that you will deal with. The State Board of Pharmacy, which can differ in laws and regulations from state to state. Medicare and Medicaid kickback laws. What are things you're able to do for your customers and some things you may not be able to do due to restrictions of the law. The DEA, the strict regulations that have come down over the years with opioids. There are always going to be different regulating bodies either to accredit you, to make sure that you're not doing something that's going to cause harm to the public. And so you need to be very, astute to what all those are. The other thing is, no matter what your business is, even if you're not worried about making a ton of money, you've got to make sure that you are making some type of money to be able to cover the operations, to make salary, and also hopefully to make a net profit, either to provide an additional return to yourself for all your hard work, but also to reinvest into the company. Current rate right now, just in the state of community pharmacy business, the average net profit margin is only 2.9%. But if I told you prescription sales are still averaging anywhere from 3.6 million, and that's a very small pharmacy, that still isn't bad if you take net profit off of 3.6 million. The biggest problem we currently have in community pharmacy in general is that in independent world, 92% of the revenue is derived from the sale of the prescription drug. And we, unlike other types of businesses, do not always have control of how we price our product. That control is based on how the manufacturer prices the drug and also based upon how insurances, pharmacy benefit managers are willing to reimburse us. And it can differ from Medicare to Medicaid type of plans to commercial plans. There is not a lot of people in today's world paying cash for prescriptions. The other thing is we are a business, regardless of whatever we're doing in a pharmacy business, safety comes into play. So we need to be staffed appropriately to make sure that we take care of our patients, but at the same time, payroll expenses can, be costly if we overstaff. If you're a traditional community pharmacy, you are dealing with inventory, the cost of goods, because you want to make sure that whatever you get reimbursed, you make enough to make a profit and also to be able to pay your bills, such as your wholesaler, where you get your drugs, but you also need to make sure that you are keeping just enough inventory, that you're not out of product for the patient, but at the same time, you're not getting paid by an insurance company for anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks after you fill a prescription, but you still have to purchase new product. So there's a constant battle on inventory control. Now, as we look into the future, you may have other business ideas. You may have technology ideas for pharmacy, where there's different types of costs related to that. There's different types of principles that you may need to understand both financially and legally. When we get into clinical is kind of a new realm because not every state has regulations of what mandates clinical. A lot of times it's also based on what we're allowed to do within our scope of practice, based on both federal and state laws, but there is opportunities to create other pharmacy businesses that may not be tied to a product as traditional community pharmacy is. And this semester you may want to explore and research what are those new opportunities in pharmacy. What my suggestion is, most people are not going to come right out of pharmacy school and start your own business. I encourage you, when you are picking rotations, try to pick some rotations for people that have independent companies. When you're done with your schooling and looking for jobs, eventually work for another self-starter before trying your own business. Work for an independent owner or consultant. Take a manager job, even if it's in the chain industry. Maybe what you want to do part-time is not a full-time job. Maybe you work relief somewhere. But the reason why is you want to be able to see what all goes on in those operations and also observe and learn from the mistakes that all entrepreneurs will share with you of things that they wish they would have known when they were first starting out. In today's world, there's lots of opportunities out there. There's business conferences to network. NCPA, which is the National Community Pharmacy Association, is the biggest representative for independent pharmacy. But every year is one of the meetings I attend. I learn more than just traditional pharmacy. There's lots of different companies out there. I will share with you different links of different opportunities that are out there throughout the semester, but there's different people offering services to teach you, and I think a new buzzword is called a pharma entrepreneur. And there are ways through networking we can also learn how to become our own boss and develop our own business. A couple other things that people have learned over time is that when you first start out in a business, don't overinvest. It's nice to have brand new shiny equipment, just like when you first graduate. The big thing most people gravitate is they want to go buy that brand new car. But as you know, as soon as you drive a brand new car off the parking lot, it begins to lose value. There's opportunities where you may be able to get used furniture, fixtures, and even technical equipment. You can buy refurbished computers, and so there are ways to control costs there when you're starting out a new business. When you are looking to what space do I need to have my business, you want to have the ability to expand, but you want to start small, because a lot of times a good tie to what your business is what the cost of your lease is. We'll talk about later this semester about the importance of negotiating a good lease, because if your business goes sour, sometimes you may be out of business, but you're still obligated to paying a lease or mortgage on a building. And so making sure that when you are looking at fixed assets that you are purchasing for your business, you do it wisely. Do your homework. One of the things I'm going to challenge you in your reflective exercise this week is give me an example in a pharmacy business that you think there's an opportunity. It could be a traditional one where you think there are new ideas. It could be in a new one. But I want you in your reflective, and I will post this under the assignments, is give me an example of a pharmacy business. And I want you to do some research on it. The biggest thing when you're trying to develop what type of business you want to have, you want to be able to listen to your customers. What do your customers want? What are people missing out there in the industry? How does your business separate? Why will somebody want to drive to your business or hire you as a consultant versus somebody else? Maybe you have an idea of something, what do they need that they do not know yet. Many things. How many of us thought about, if you're old enough to remember cell phones when the latest craze was how small can I make a flip phone and how thin I can to put into my pocket. Now, look what we do. We carry large, computers in our pocket, in smartphones. And it's not about how small they are anymore, it's how big we can make them. And so, did we know that that's what we wanted back then? So, listen to your customers, but at sometimes you may be able to bring a service. And the hardest problem about bringing that service then is selling that service, marketing that service to a customer. Notice other businesses fail and try to discover how to avoid repeating their mistakes. Who and what is in your community? Many of you may work for different chains. There are success stories in those chains, but you may notice ways that they fail. Learn from those. Who are the leaders in healthcare in your community? How did they become successful? What are ones that may have faltered, disappeared? If you have lived in the Pittsburgh area most of your life, we've seen numerous health systems, merge, change, and how their existence done that. There was a chain community pharmacy back in the late 90s and early 2000s called Farmore, and it was had been the fastest growing, pharmacy business out there for the last, 20, 30 years. It no longer exists due to poor planning and financing. You can learn from other businesses. Think about BlackBerry. How many of those are people carrying around? So, finding, the timing and location. There are numerous opportunities, I believe, in the consulting world and the clinical world services for pharmacy, but finding the right time to do that is important. And one of the biggest things we'll focus on this semester is business planning is the key. The biggest thing too you have to, and I asked you to reflect this past week, and I'll be responding to your reflections this week, is why did you want to take this course? Because why you want to take this course is the same reason is why do you want to start a business in healthcare? Is it just that you want to get rich? You want to be famous and well known for your successes? You want to create a new service? I'll be not satisfied unless I give a good try that I could be my own boss. You could have a combination of these or any other types of reasons, but you really need to find out in your heart what's driving you to want to be that entrepreneur, to be that pharmacy owner. The biggest thing too, why business planning is so important is, do you have the income to get through lean times? Greater than 50% of new businesses fail in the first 5 years. It's a double-edged sword a lot of times. You could do really well from the get-go, but if you grow too fast, you may not have enough income to help with the growth. If you grow too slow, you do not have enough income to pay your daily, monthly, and even your loans you may have for your business. So the key thing is, how do I grow just, at a good pace that I have enough income to pay bills while my business grows? As I said, in the community pharmacy world, there's a lot with timing. Insurance companies pay you maybe, Medicare patient plans pay you within 3 weeks, but others may pay you within, 4 weeks. And inventory, what are your payroll expenses, your insurances? That is why it's so important to plan how you're going to get those assets, how many people you're going to need in your operations, and also pricing out the other things that go along in a business. Who will offer the services and run your business if you need a vacation, or sick, or have an emergency? You need to think about things such as, do you have casual employees that you can rely on? How do you schedule? Do you schedule a month at a time? Have you looked in short-term and long-term disability insurance to cover you and pay for things when you may have business issues? You also need to look at, the reliability of other non-pharmacy managers and technicians. And what is your backup plan? As I said, we're going to talk about in the coming weeks operational management, but just to kind of give you a sky view of operational structure and process. So you need to think about what is the primary role of your pharmacy business, and whatever that primary role is, then you think about how do I get the day-to-day operations done from the start to the end, and how do those operations deliver to what patients want. The idea of a business existing, based on a definition by Peter Drucker, a famous business management writer in the 70s, wrote, is to serve society. A company should focus on serving its customers, and profits are simply a required resource for the company to continue to serve society. So if you have a great business idea that is going to deliver what patients, what customers want, you should be successful. So you need to think to yourself as you're developing your business is, who is your customer? It may be patients, it may be employers, it may be insurance companies, it may be healthcare systems, it may be all of those combined. And what are those services you're offering? And as I said before, your reflective exercise for next week is think of a new example of something that might be a good opportunity in pharmacy business. The next thing you have to think to yourself is, how do I price my service? How do I price my service enough to cover pharmacist salary, pharmacy staff, and other, entities that are required for operations, so that I can, pay them and also have a net profit. The thing you need to think about, obviously you can't run a business alone. How many employees can you afford? What do you outsource? Payroll, billing? Do you do those all in-house? Do you have somebody you pay to do that? The other thing too is, when you're first starting out, there's the old saying, you may ask too many people for advice, but you may want to create a small advisory board of people that you can rely on to give you feedback. The other thing too is, you need to think about that you can plan and plan forever, but maybe you're planning so much you're not worrying about your sales. If you think about over the last 10, 15 years of what occurred with BlackBerry was doing great in the sales, but they were very slow on providing new product development, and they basically fell behind in the market and are pretty much almost non-existent. The other thing is, whatever business you have, is it too small of a niche that you're not diverse enough? And so you need to think about, sometimes having a traditional community pharmacy may help get you started to pay the bills, but maybe you want to eventually morph into more clinical service oriented. The other thing too is, entering a market with no distribution partner. What does that mean? You don't have a household name. You're not placed into a large, maybe retail setting like, a Walmart. But how are you going to get, your service, your name out there? And we'll talk about that. A big way we're going to do that is with marketing and target marketing. This is just a checklist, and we will go over later in the semester about how these all construe. But when you're starting a new pharmacy business, first you got to develop a business plan. Then you'll need to figure out where you want your business. You'll have to do negotiations of the lease if you're going to lease the business. As I said before, there's numerous things that regulate pharmacy. So there's licenses and permits. There's startup funding. You need to partner, if you're going to be a traditional community pharmacy, with where you're going to buy your drugs and get it at a fair price. You're going to have to purchase computers to process sales, point of sales, pharmacy software, whether it's clinical or for prescription processing. You need to set up, if you're going to get paid by third parties, you need to figure out a way, how do I get all those contracts? You need to look into, if you're going to do any type of screenings, maybe you need a CLIA waiver if you're going to do lab work. Professional, insurance and personal insurance, and you need to price out your utilities, such as your phones, your internet, development of your website. So there's lots of things that take into planning a business. For those of you who are really interested in getting into the nit and gritty of this, that is what next semester is about. Next semester is about your semester of developing your own idea into a business plan. As I said, later on this semester, we'll talk about structure, strategic planning, and operational planning. But if you take a look at the traditional chain world, you have like a board of directors, a CEO, a CFO, a senior vice president, executive vice president, director, manager. You, being your own owner initially, will wear all those hats. You'll be in charge of lots of different things. You'll have different staff under you, maybe eventually a manager, maybe a lead technician, but you will be the head honcho in your management. So things that you also have to think about is, how is the design of your business? What is the workflow that makes your business deliver the product or the service? What are maybe some personal requirements? Maybe there's some certificate training. How are you going to strategically plan to meet high demands if your pharmacy business grows successfully? What are the policies and procedures for you to deliver the types of business and services? And as I said earlier, you need to research what are those regulatory requirements that we are required to do to have a business. Another thing you need to understand about business is the financials. Whatever type of business you want to develop, all right, there is going to be sales. Somebody's going to pay for the service, the product you're offering. Those sales have to be high enough to either, if you're doing a traditional community pharmacy, to pay for the cost of goods, the inventory, or to pay for your time and service, and that has to be enough to give you a gross profit to cover your operating expenses, which is your salaries, the lease, the utility bills, the liability bills, paying back your loan. And this needs to be enough that after taxes, hopefully this is more rewarding than if I was working for somebody else, and also enough to reinvest in your company to allow it to grow. Some mistakes, and I provide you some articles on this week to read about mistakes of startup entrepreneurs. One may be overpaying for customers. You need to set an advertising budget. I will reflect, NCPA does a good job once a year. They actually compile data and show what successful pharmacies are doing. And currently, NCPA suggests about 0.3 to 0.4% of your sales go into advertising. So your budget may be anywhere from $13,000 to $18,000 if you were like a $3 million store in sales. How are you going to market? Are you going to have a web page? Are you going to use social media? Are you going to use traditional media markets? The other thing too is, how are you going to raise capital? How are you going to fund? Obviously, you may have some personal savings to help you get started, but you may, look for investors. You may look for traditionally banks, and we'll talk about that later on the semester of how do you do that. Not having a business plan is going to make you not able to get funding, but a business plan not only is going to allow you to share with others of why this business is going to be successful, to be able to get business loans, line of credit, but it's also going to be a way for you to reach your success. So, overthinking your business plan can also be a mistake. You don't know if you try. You can business plan to business plan to business plan, but eventually you have to get off the fence and just do it. But as you have your business going, you're going to be looking at the growth of your business. You're going to compare month to month, quarter to quarter, year to year. You may look at things such as, how does maybe a pharmacy down the road is offering prescription antibiotics. How did that impact us when they did that? A couple years ago, Walgreens took on Express Scripts and opted not to be in one of their contracts. It had a significant loss on that business, and they took a while for them to come back from that. So there's different factors that are going to impact your business that you may be able to plan for, you may not be able to. And so no matter what you're doing, a successful entrepreneur is always looking at their business and looking at the growth of their business. So that is an overview of mistakes that we see sometimes in pharmacy businesses and operations. Lastly, I'm going to leave you with a story. There was a gentleman I met several years ago, and he told me of his story about how he became a pharmacy owner. and his name was CW for the exercise here. He was a 2004 graduate from Drake University. His wife also was. He worked at an independent about 20 miles away from graduation until about May of 2006. And he opened Wear Drug in August of 2006. He had minimal background business training, and basically the way he learned was NCPA once a year puts on an ownership program. His first attempt was a junior partnership. And what a junior partnership is, basically you find a pharmacy owner who's looking to maybe want to get out and sell. And what that pharmacy owner does is they basically allow you come to work for them. But you come to work for them maybe a little bit less, than what you would be making if you were getting a traditional salary. But what you do with that pay cut is you set up a bonus plan. And at the end of that first year, that money you would get in bonus, you don't use it, spend it, put it in the bank for yourself. You use that bonus money and you purchase a percentage of the company. And the goal is that that happens over the next couple of years. And by the end of 5 years, you should own at least 50% of the business, enough for you to, purchase the rest of the company, to be able to go out and get a loan to purchase the rest of the company. And we'll go into that later on the semester of how in more detail that works. But for CW, he wanted to do the junior partnerships, but one advantage of a junior partnership, you're not locked in, completely. And it basically fizzled out after 2 months because the owner realized they didn't really want to sell. And so it never came to completion. His second attempt was to just outright purchase a pharmacy. So there was a retail pharmacy owned by a hospital. And he worked on the business plan, he negotiated, and his quote was he took 8 months to plan it and took 5 minutes to kill. They basically were able to agree on price, financing, but eventually the hospital board decided not to sell, and a lot of it was politics, and he failed and did not get a pharmacy there. His third attempt, he thought he'd do a startup. Him and his wife decided to take their future in their own hands. So they spoke to towns without pharmacies. There was one town who had 2 pharmacies and had a great market potential. And he was confident that he could become a pharmacy of choice. So the third time ended up being a charm for him. He purchased a retail pharmacy, and he started this business and actually was able to compete with the other 2 pharmacies, even though it was a small town. But he worked on realizing, what do customers want? He offered good service, and that allowed him to grow. And then eventually he purchased that same pharmacy that years ago turned him down, that hospital pharmacy, and they also had a durable medical equipment. They were able to purchase it or merge it, and that pharmacy has now grown and to expand. So he then took that business and he relocated it into a high-traffic grocery store. And so his business is mainly retail. He does specialty compounding, and out of that he does long-term care. And his business does over, between $3 to $4 million a year, and he staffs it with 3 full-time and 3 full-time pharmacists, 2 part-time technicians, and 2 students. So the challenge to owning your own business is finding the ideal practice setting, finding what you want to do. Do you buy somebody's business or do you start from scratch? Nearly all businesses must be taken from someone else. So the key thing is, whatever business you're starting, because most businesses aren't something that's super spanking brand new, it just might be something different. You also have to think about, where do you want to locate? Where would you like your business? And that also is something you want to research. A lot of times too, mistakes that you learn is you may listen to the naysayers. People say you can't do it. Some people will always say you can't do it. Listen to people who have done it. Associate with people who are positive. One of the things I like about going to the NCPA meeting once a year is I'm around successful people, even though sometimes times are tough, they've learned to overcome that. Rely on other people that may help your business, such as wholesalers. There's opportunities to get different types of grants. Find the Entrepreneur Center in your area. There are lots of different ways that you can find cash flow. But a key thing we're going to talk about this semester is to understand financials. The other thing we're going to talk about this semester is human resources. How do you hire people? The who, how many, and what? Because people are going to be your greatest asset to your business. Think about any businesses that you go to. How well is the customer service that you get? And what are the policies and procedures that you need to be very successful in your business? This is so important. I can't tell you where sometimes in my own businesses where we falter is that we're either not following our own policies and procedures, or we don't have a good exact policy and procedure for that. So we will be talking very shortly in the coming weeks about niche services. And what is the service that you think that you would like? Whether it's compounding, immunization, diabetic case management, long-term care, adherence services, some type of clinical service where you collaborate with other healthcare systems, providers, and payer models. So this is just a brief intro to, as I said, the operations management that you need to think about owning your own business, and also mistakes that can occur. Please watch this video again if you need to. Read the readings. I also have a couple other snippet YouTube videos from an accounting company that works with pharmacies that talk about, mistakes that pharmacy owners have made. And I challenge you to watch those. And also, too, please read the reflective exercise assignment. And I will be returning back to you your reflection that you sent me this past week. Thank you very much, and have a good week.